In 1970, a caravan of 60 brightly painted school buses rolled out of California and onto the rural highways of America. Inside were hundreds of young people attempting an extreme social experiment, a coordinated mass dropout from mainstream society. Leading this exodus was Stephen Gaskin, an English teacher turned counterculture guru. He had spent the previous few years lecturing to massive crowds about pacifism, ecology, and a completely new way of living. Gaskin and his followers were fleeing San Francisco. The Haight-Ashbury district, once the epicenter of the hippie movement, was collapsing under the weight of hard drugs and overcrowding. They wanted to build an isolated, pure utopia from scratch. Joining this caravan required a radical commitment. Members took a vow of absolute poverty, handed over all their personal money to a collective pool, and adhered to a strict 100% vegan diet. By retreating into the wilderness, this impoverished group intended to sever all ties with the American mainstream. Yet out of sheer necessity, they ended up refining and popularizing practices that would later become staples of the plant-based food and natural birth movements. In 1971, the caravan finally parked on a 1,000-acre plot of raw, undeveloped woods in Summertown, Tennessee. They called it, simply, the farm. They faced an immediate logistical nightmare. There was no electricity, no running water, and almost no collective wealth to build basic infrastructure. For shelter, they were living out of their old buses and makeshift tents. The stakes quickly escalated from ideological to life or death. They were a massive population of strict vegans stranded in the rural South without a reliable source of protein, and they had several pregnant members with no money to pay for local hospital care. High-minded philosophy instantly collided with physical survival. To keep their community alive, these city-dwelling flower children had to become grassroots agricultural engineers and self-taught medical pioneers. The first crisis was nutritional. Hundreds of people were doing grueling manual labor every day, and they had zero funds to buy specialized food to keep a large vegan community healthy. They turned to the only cheap, locally available crop that could sustain them: soybeans. At the time, American farmers grew soy primarily for livestock feed or oil, but rarely for direct human consumption. The Commune established a makeshift soy dairy. Using scrap materials, they engineered entirely off-grid methods to process raw, bitter soybeans into edible, high-protein foods. This required exhausting physical labor. Without modern manufacturing equipment, members spent hours grinding beans, boiling the mash over wood fires, and manually pressing the curds into wooden boxes to make tofu and tempeh. To generate income from the outside world, they eventually codified their survival recipes. They published the Farm Vegetarian Cookbook, which taught curious outsiders how to utilize these plant proteins at home. While these foods were already staples in Asian American communities, the Commune's DIY methods helped introduce them to a growing demographic of Western health food advocates, decades before soy milk became a grocery store standard. The second crisis was medical. Several women on the farm were pregnant, and the Commune simply could not afford the fees for local hospital deliveries. Ina May Gaskin took charge of the community's healthcare out of necessity. During her own first pregnancy, a physician had used obstetrical forceps in a traumatic delivery, leaving her determined to find a safer, less invasive alternative. With no formal medical background, she sought mentorship from Dr. John Williams, a local family physician with 20 years of experience assisting old-order Amish home births. This allowed the commune to build its own delivery system outside of the hospital. Under his guidance, they created the Farm Midwifery Center. It became one of the first out-of-hospital birthing centers in the United States, focusing on woman-centered care. Gaskin popularized a specific physical technique, now known as the Gaskin maneuver. It is used to resolve shoulder dystocia, a complication where a baby's shoulder gets stuck behind the mother's pelvic bone. Instead of surgery, the maneuver relies on biomechanics. Shifting the mother to her hands and knees alters the pelvic shape, widening the release point, freeing the shoulder. This is a comparative chart showing the outcomes of over 1,700 home births at the farm between 1971 and 1989. For low-risk pregnancies, the data proved that the midwife's outcomes matched or exceeded the safety records of physician-attended hospital deliveries. These results helped revive direct-entry midwifery, a field where practitioners train in the craft of birth directly, rather than starting as registered nurses. By the early 1980s, the utopian design hit a mathematical wall. The farm's population had exploded, and their collective economy could no longer support the sheer number of people living there. Facing bankruptcy, the community underwent the changeover. They abandoned their vow of poverty and dissolved the collective economy, requiring members to support themselves within the traditional American system. While their internal economic model proved unsustainable, the practical solutions they developed to survive that poverty found a massive audience in the outside world. Their early DIY experiments with soybeans helped bridge the gap between niche vegetarianism and the modern plant-based aisles found in every American grocery store. Ina May Gaskin's seminal book, Spiritual Midwifery, became a classical medical text. It helped launch the modern doula movement and paved the way for holistic birthing centers across the globe. The radical outcasts who boarded painted school buses to escape American society never reached their isolated utopia. Instead, the survival tactics they were forced to invent became standardized practices in modern food and medicine.